Lithuania is paying 20% more than Latvia and Estonia. And do you think that there is some way Lithuania can reduce this price for paying the gas? Because we are paying possibly the most expensive price in Europe for gas.
It's quite clear that there is one way Gazprom deals with its consumers. Those consumers who are ready to demonstrate their will to act, promoting competition, alternative sources of supply, reducing consumption, and so on, they are treated differently because the threat of losing market becomes very real. And the more country is dependent on Gazprom, the more it shows its weakness, the more pressure is being put in turn. So I think if you take a look at the experience of other countries, there's a direct correlation between these factors. So I think one way in the medium and longer term, one way to address the problem of import dependency and worse price conditions is competition, alternatives, developing either be it LNG supply from overseas or be it shale production at home. If you will not be able to establish these alternative sources of supply, it means that there will be always an opportunity to exert monopoly pressure on you and make the price for you higher than for everybody else. I think that there is where the answer lies. It's not in the negotiations about discounts. Some people naively believe that if we approach Gazprom more smoothly, it will be so generous to provide discounts and so on. Just take a look at recent examples. For instance, Ukraine, under President Yanukovych, several years ago, received general discounts on gas prices for Russia, but it came at a price. Ukraine was forced to sign an agreement long-term agreement of continuation of presence of Black Sea Fleet. Also, Gazprom did not surrender a single penny in this whole discount issue because it had forced the Russian government to abandon state export duties on gas. I don't think they have this opportunity anymore because current budget situation in Russia is not good. We barely are balancing our federal budget, even with oil costing over $100 a barrel. Actually, I think it's going to be very difficult to repeat the Ukrainian scheme. And even the discount scheme applied to Ukraine did not save Ukraine from the $7 billion claim which Gazprom is now submitting to court, which means that there is no guarantee with the monopoly. If it can exert monopoly pressure, even if you negotiate certain discounts for a short period of time, monopoly can come back with more complexities and more difficulties imposed on you. So I think you should seek a systemic and longer-term solution based on competition and creating stable and viable alternative sources of supply, rather than focus on hidden bilateral undercover negotiations on temporary discounts, which in the longer run do not work like in the Ukrainian case.
Talking about electricity, you heard about the referendum results, and the project which was started by the previous government is halted now. It's sort of, we don't know what is going to happen. We have to wait until middle of this year, until May. One of the ministers of Latvia, I think Minister of Defense, after he found out about the outcome of the referendum, he said that this is a victory for Russia.
Well, you have to consider that the modern world is not a zero-sum game. And particularly, I think a lot of recent developments in many countries have shown that nuclear power is rapidly becoming an issue of the past. I'm sorry to sound a bit biased in this regard because I'm dealing for a long time with this issue professionally. I'm a very much anti-nuclear guy. I have absolutely equal attitude, be it Baltic nuclear power plant in Kaliningrad, Ostrovetsky in Belarus, or new Visaginas power station in Lithuania. It's just, to me, it's just throwing money away because nuclear power is extremely cost ineffective. Take a look at neighboring Finland. When they began constructing the Olkiluoto power station, they said they drew a very, very pleasant budget of 3 billion euros. Now it's well over 6, and it's up and running. There's virtually no end in sight.
And they're planning for another one?
They are, but actually I have strong doubts that this will be commercially very effective. I think this is one of the cases where this geopolitical energy security considerations are interfering with normal economic logic. Basically, to put it simply, if you would be able to develop sufficient alternatives in gas supply, be it imported LNG, domestically produced shale gas, no one beats that. I mean, there's nothing in the world that can be compared by effectiveness with gas-fired power generation. Nothing. Nuclear energy, I mean, stands above the clouds as far as costs are concerned. Gas-fired power is far more effective than that. It's just that what you have to create is a framework which allows you to escape dependence on one source of supply, which would depress the prices down, keep them under effective market pressure and control. And if you create this alternative competitive environment in gas supply, I think gas-fired power generation, that is an option. It's also a very environmentally friendly option because the issue of nuclear waste is still fundamentally unresolved. No matter what anybody would say to you, is fundamentally unresolved. And I think in this regard, given all the extra cost additions that nuclear power features, be it decommissioning, you experienced that with Ignalina. You were one of the pioneers in modern Europe to decommission an old plant, and you know how costly it is. There's nuclear waste, you have capital construction costs which normally exceed the planned scheduled amount at least 2 times or even more, right? And you also have, basically what you do is you switch one form of import dependence to another because uranium still has to be imported. And actually in this regard, I think if one considers focusing on one very simple and reasonable project, which is creating a truly competitive gas market based on various sources of supply, domestic LNG from overseas, gas from Gazprom, why not if it comes at a competitive price? Then actually development of power generation based on gas-fired power plants, economically that's just obviously the most reasonable option. So I think maybe I totally agree with the population of Lithuania, which had voted out nuclear option at the referendum. It was a wise decision, very much in line with current global trends. I think global nuclear industry is aiming at a shutdown. So actually I think it opens good perspective for normal, viable strategy of energy supply.
Talking about Nord Stream, it was a lot of comprehension in the Baltic states and in Poland about effects of Nord Stream towards their independence, towards their economies, and division of Europe, a new Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, and all of that. A lot of that comprehension was happening around. Here we go. We have it. It's functioning. Do you think that all that comprehension was founded that Lithuania is actually we still facing threats from that? Is that the case?
Well, I think what is important is that in the past decade, European energy market, in particular gas market, had fundamentally changed. So when all this discussion about Nord Stream started, then it was called the North European Pipeline. The name Nord Stream even did not appear some time ago. When this discussion had began, European market was far less competitive than today. No one could have imagined such a rapid development of LNG. pipeline interconnections within Europe, development of underground storage facilities, not to mention such things as North American shale revolution and potential development of shale deposits in Eastern Europe. We have a much more relaxed and competitive environment in the European gas market now. What we see is, despite the fact that Nord Stream is built and operating, we also see Gazprom, in fact, squeezed out of the European market. It has been losing its market share last year very rapidly. The exports to Europe had declined, and Gazprom is trying to justify that with the economic difficulties of Europe. But you can clearly see, if you go and break down by country analysis, it's very easy to see that actually Gazprom supplies to most European countries have declined much stronger than consumption of gas in the same countries. So other competitors, be it Qatar or Norway, have been winning gains. Libyan supplies restored, right? Again, replacing Gazprom gas. So it's rather competitive forces at work and Gazprom losing positions in Europe, rather than just it can be simply explained by a crisis environment. Means that whenever there is more competition, monopolies become far less scary. So all these fears and doubts about Nord Stream, they're justified simply because of the extent of monopoly power of Gazprom. Monopoly power is never good. It's always bringing a lot of discomfort for consumers. But you also see very positive competitive trends emerging at the European market fundamentally, which are rapidly spreading onto Eastern Europe, onto Baltic countries, and that is good. If they proceed with building competitive environment, all these negative effects of monopoly dependence on Russian supplies and so on, I think it's in strategic interest of Russia. I'm a Russian citizen. I'm very much interested in my country doing well in the international energy markets. I think it will be very healthy for our own national interest if we are to operate not in a monopoly environment where we can pressurize everybody and stem monopoly rents. If we will be operating in an open, transparent, competitive environment, competing with others openly with different alternative sources, that will force us to be more efficient, increase our productivity, efficiency, and so on, and that will be good for Russia as well. So I think right now, with the development of such competitive environment on the European gas market, Nord Stream is becoming really a secondary story and not as scary as a lot of people thought before.
And the last question about Stockholm arbitrage. Do you think that Lithuania has a chance to win?
Well, no one can predict what might happen in court. However, I think Lithuania's position is strongly backed by the European legislation, which is widely adopted in a similar manner all over Europe. In a pretty similar manner being applied to Gazprom as well. And in a lot of cases, Gazprom is voluntarily complying with this legislation. So I would not dare to predict how effectively Lithuanian lawyers will work in the Stockholm arbitrage. And what the arbitrage will decide, I truly believe in its independence. However, I think, professionally speaking, it's a relatively easy case to win. So I think simply Gazprom is trying to portray the situation, basically exaggerating its capabilities of bringing the whole case to the Gazprom-favored court victory. I think the odds are that just take a look at what was happening in the other countries regarding the same issue. If you can give me an example where Gazprom won such a case, I think I would be very much interested. I never heard of that.
So I have a good chance to try to...
Yes, it depends on dedication and professionalism of people who defend the unbundling and competition promotion case.